From his divorce with Jennifer Aniston to the turbulent years with Angelina Jolie, from abuse allegations to lawsuits over a failed charity project in New Orleans, Brad Pitt's life is a story of glamour, collapse, and reinvention. This video takes you through the shocking scandals that reshaped the legacy of one of Hollywood's biggest stars. Hollywood loves its heroes, but what happens when the golden boy himself begins to fall? Brad Pitt wasn't just a movie star. He was the symbol of perfection, with a dream marriage, a dream career, and a dream family. But behind the red carpets and glowing headlines lay betrayals, lawsuits, and accusations that would shatter that flawless image. Tonight, we'll uncover the scandals that rewrote his story and show you a side of Brad Pitt that the cameras never wanted you to see. Don't miss a single twist in this unbelievable story. Make sure to subscribe, like, and listen until the end, because what comes next will change how you see Brad Pitt forever. At the height of his career, Brad Pitt embodied Hollywood perfection. His name carried the weight of stardom. His face adorned countless magazine covers, and audiences saw him as the flawless leading man. He was not only admired for his craft, but also for what seemed like a stable, enviable personal life. Married to Jennifer Aniston, America's sweetheart from Friends, Pitt appeared untouchable, an image of balance between professional triumph and domestic bliss. Yet beneath the glittering surface, fault lines had already begun to form. The fracture became visible in 2005 when Pitt's involvement with Angelina Jolie during the filming of Mr. and Mrs. Smith was revealed. What began as whispers on set quickly exploded into one of the most publicized scandals in Hollywood history. To outsiders, the chemistry between Pitt and Jolie looked undeniable, but for millions of fans, it came at a devastating cost. His marriage to Aniston collapsed, and with it, the illusion of the perfect couple that tabloids had long celebrated. Headlines painted Pitt as both a betrayer and a man swept away by passion. Jolie was branded the homewrecker, while Aniston became the wronged heroine in a story that divided the public. Paparazzi trailed the new couple relentlessly, capturing stolen moments in Africa with Jolie's children, while Aniston appeared alone, silent, yet visibly wounded. For Pitt, the fallout was immediate. His carefully crafted reputation as Hollywood's golden boy began to tarnish. Overnight, he was no longer just a handsome leading man. He was the subject of moral debates, op-eds, and endless late-night jokes. The scandal ignited a narrative that would shadow him for years. The idea that beneath the perfect smile and movie star aura was a man whose choices carried consequences far darker than the roles he played on screen. The affair with Jolie did not simply end a marriage. It created a storm that Brad Pitt could never fully outrun. In the month following his separation from Jennifer Aniston, Pitt became the focal point of a media circus that questioned not only his fidelity, but his very character. Tabloids filled front pages with speculation, while late-night comedians turned his private choices into public punchlines. By 2006, the scandal had evolved into something bigger. Brangelina was born. Photographers stalked Pitt and Jolie across continents, capturing images of them adopting children, attending charity missions, and appearing inseparable. To admirers, they were a modern power couple, glamorous yet committed to humanitarian causes. To critics, they represented betrayal, lust, and the fragility of Hollywood vows. Aniston's quiet dignity only sharpened the contrast, fueling the narrative of Jolie as a seductress and Pitt as a man too weak to resist temptation. The scandal was not confined to gossip columns. It bled into his career. While Pitt continued to headline major films, the tone of coverage around him shifted. Interviews that once focused on craft and artistry began to probe his private life, his choices as a partner, a father, a man caught between desire and responsibility. Every red carpet appearance became a referendum on his loyalty. Every family photo analyzed for signs of strain. Despite the controversy, Pitt seemed determined to forge ahead. He leaned into his role as partner to Jolie and father to her growing family. Together, they adopted and raised 6 children,
blending cultures and backgrounds under one roof. Yet beneath the smiles and carefully curated charity work, whispers persisted. Friends and insiders hinted at arguments, differences in parenting styles, and the weight of constant scrutiny. For Pitt, the scandal of leaving Aniston was no longer just about a broken marriage. It became the foundation for an identity that would define the next decade of his life. An identity that carried both admiration and suspicion, glamour and unease.
As the years passed, the relationship between Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie transformed from a romantic scandal into a global spectacle. Together, they traveled to conflict zones, donated millions to humanitarian projects, and presented themselves as a couple united not only by love, but by mission. Yet behind this carefully maintained image, tensions brewed. Their family grew rapidly, and with 6 children, some adopted, others biological, the household became a complex, chaotic world where differences in values and parenting styles often clashed. Rumors of discord appeared early. Close friends whispered about Jolie's strict rules and Pitt's more relaxed approach, about her relentless commitment to causes abroad and his desire for stability at home. The couple denied the gossip, smiling for cameras and praising each other in interviews, but the strain was difficult to conceal. Public appearances that once radiated warmth began to show hints of coldness, stiff gestures, forced smiles, and distances that could not be explained away by fatigue. By 2016, cracks had widened into open fractures. The turning point came with the infamous incident aboard a private jet. Reports suggested that during a heated argument, Pitt lost control, allegedly shouting at Jolie and clashing with one of the children. Though official investigations by the FBI and Child Services did not result in charges, the story devastated his reputation. Overnight, headlines that once glorified Brangelina transformed into accusations of abuse, dysfunction, and secrecy. Jolie filed for divorce soon after, citing irreconcilable differences and requesting full custody of the children. The announcement stunned the public. For over a decade, Pitt and Jolie had seemed untouchable, the embodiment of modern celebrity power. Now their empire crumbled in real time, exposed through legal filings and bitter press statements. For Pitt, the scandal cut deeper than the divorce itself. He faced not only the collapse of a marriage, but the collapse of a narrative carefully constructed over years. The golden boy who had once charmed the world now stood accused of being something far more human, flawed, temperamental, and vulnerable to the very demons he had always kept hidden. The divorce between Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie quickly turned into one of the most publicized legal battles Hollywood had ever seen. At first, many believed the separation would be handled quietly, given the couple's influence and desire to protect their children. But within weeks, the private disagreement spilled into the open, and every filing, every leaked document became headline material. The core of the conflict revolved around custody. Jolie sought full custody, citing concerns about Pitt's temper and alleged alcohol abuse. Pitt, in turn, demanded shared custody, arguing that the children needed both parents in their lives. Court hearings dragged on for years, exposing the raw details of a family fractured under pressure. Personal emails, therapist reports, and testimonies entered the public record, transforming a domestic struggle into global entertainment. Pitt's image took another blow when Jolie's legal team described a history of abuse, referencing not just the incident on the plane, but a pattern of behavior. Although he denied the allegations, the words themselves were enough to stain his reputation. For an actor long seen as the charming everyman, being associated with violence and control was devastating. At the same time, Pitt made a rare admission. He acknowledged struggles with alcohol and sought help through therapy and sobriety programs. This confession softened public opinion slightly, painting him as a man confronting his flaws rather than hiding from them. Still, the damage lingered. Once he had been admired for perfection, now he was discussed in terms of failure and recovery. Meanwhile, Jolie was criticized too. Some accused her of weaponizing the children and the media, of turning private pain into public warfare. The couple who had once symbolized glamour and humanitarian strength had become locked in a bitter feud that revealed only bitterness and distrust.
By the end of this chapter, the dream of Brangelina had vanished. What remained was a fractured family, a tarnished legacy, and a man forced to rebuild his identity in the harsh glare of an unforgiving spotlight.
After the dust of the initial custody battles settled, a new scandal emerged, tied not to Pitt's personal life, but to his humanitarian ambitions. Years earlier, he had founded the Make It Right Foundation, a project aimed at rebuilding New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. The vision was noble: eco-friendly homes for families who had lost everything. For a time, Pitt was celebrated not only as a movie star, but as a philanthropist, using his fame for good. Yet, a decade later, residents began filing lawsuits, claiming the houses were crumbling, unsafe, and filled with mold. What was once hailed as a beacon of hope became a legal nightmare. Plaintiffs accused the foundation, and by extension Pitt himself, of negligence and fraud. Court documents described rotting wood, collapsing structures, and health risks. For the people who had trusted him, the betrayal cut deep. The star who promised safety had left them with dangerous ruins. Though Pitt argued he was not directly responsible for the construction decisions, his name was inseparable from the project. Headlines framed him as the celebrity who had let down a vulnerable community. The lawsuit sought millions in damages. Pitt's legal team fought to distance him from day-to-day operations, but residents demanded accountability. In 2022, a proposed settlement fell apart after funds promised by a partner organization proved non-existent. By 2025, Pitt himself was ordered to testify, with critics declaring he had blood on his hands. The scandal reminded the public that even good intentions, when mishandled, could transform into disasters that haunt reputations. This episode added another layer to Pitt's troubled image. Already scarred by divorce and abuse allegations, he now faced accusations of betraying those who needed him most. To some, it was proof that the actor's life off-screen was far more chaotic and flawed than the carefully scripted characters he played. To others, it showed the risks of celebrity philanthropy. When fame outpaces accountability, failure becomes inevitable. The aftermath of the foundation scandal left Brad Pitt facing a dual crisis: the wreckage of his personal reputation and the collapse of a project once meant to symbolize redemption. Yet in Hollywood, reinvention is often the only path forward. Pitt retreated from the spotlight, granting fewer interviews, choosing roles more carefully, and cultivating an image of quiet resilience. Publicists emphasize his commitment to sobriety, therapy, and fatherhood, hoping to reshape the narrative from fallen idol to man in recovery. At the same time, his legal war with Angelina Jolie deepened. The battleground shifted to their French winery, Chateau Miraval, which they had once called a sanctuary. Jolie sold her stake to an investor linked to Russian business interests without Pitt's approval, prompting him to sue. The case reignited old wounds, dragging their private disputes back into the headlines. For observers, it seemed the former couple would never escape each other's shadow. Court documents revealed Jolie's claim that Pitt had tried to force her into signing a strict non-disclosure agreement that would have barred her from discussing allegations of abuse. Pitt's team countered, accusing her of using such claims as a smokescreen to justify the contested sale. The details blurred into a swirl of accusations and counter-accusations, each one exposing another layer of bitterness. For audiences, the scandal was no longer about a love triangle or a failed marriage. It had evolved into a saga of power, money, and control. Once admired for his charm and beauty, Pitt was now seen as a man fighting desperately to defend what remained of his empire. To critics, his fall from grace was proof of Hollywood's hypocrisy. To loyal fans, it was a story of a flawed human struggling to survive relentless scrutiny. Through it all, one truth became clear. The golden image of Brad Pitt had vanished forever, replaced by a figure both more fragile and more complicated than anyone had imagined. Despite the constant turmoil surrounding his personal life, Brad Pitt's career did not collapse. Instead, he managed the rare feat in Hollywood to separate the actor from the scandals,
By the late 2010s, he began to choose projects that allowed him to step back from leading man stereotypes and embrace more nuanced, vulnerable roles. This shift culminated in his performance in Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. The role of stuntman Cliff Booth, a character scarred by rumors of violence yet possessing quiet charisma, mirrored the contradictions in Pitt's own life. The performance earned him widespread acclaim and eventually an Academy Award. Accepting the Oscar, Pitt delivered a short, understated speech that avoided self-pity or controversy. For a moment, the Hollywood establishment seemed ready to forgive. Yet, even during this triumph, the shadow of his personal scandals lingered. Headlines about custody hearings or court filings often ran beside glowing reviews of his work, ensuring that two narratives could never fully be untangled. Public perception became split. Some viewed him as a redeemed figure, a man who faced demons and rebuilt his life with humility. Others argued that success on screen could not erase the unresolved questions of abuse allegations or failed philanthropic promises. Social media amplified the divide, with fans defending him passionately, while critics highlighted every inconsistency. Pitt himself maintained the low-key stance, rarely addressing controversies directly. Instead, he projected an image of a man focused on craft, fatherhood, and inner growth. He spoke cautiously about sobriety, admitted mistakes, but stopped short of offering full explanations. To many, this silence felt strategic, a way of controlling a narrative that could not be fully repaired. In this period, Brad Pitt existed in two parallel realities, celebrated as an artist while scrutinized as a flawed man. It was a delicate balance that revealed how even scandal, if navigated carefully, could coexist with acclaim in the strange ecosystem of Hollywood. While Brad Pitt's career seemed to regain stability, his relationship with his children remained a painful and unresolved chapter. The custody battle with Angelina Jolie stretched on for years, with hearings in multiple courts and endless delays. Each new filing reopened wounds and brought more details into the public domain, forcing the children to grow up under the glare of headlines they never asked for. Reports surfaced of estrangement between Pitt and some of his older children. In particular, his son Maddox was said to have distanced himself after the plane incident, rarely appearing with Pitt in public and allegedly refusing contact. Other children maintained a quieter bond, yet the consistency of their visits and communication became the subject of constant speculation. For a man who had once prided himself on building a large international family, this rift was devastating. Jolie insisted her priority was the children's safety and stability, while Pitt argued that she was attempting to cut him out of their lives. The accusations shifted with time, sometimes centered on past conflicts, other times on parenting styles or living arrangements. To outsiders, it seemed less like a legal dispute and more like a battlefield where personal history was endlessly weaponized. Pitt tried to keep the focus on reconciliation. In interviews, he spoke with restraint, emphasizing his love for his children and his hope to heal relationships. Still, the legal documents told a harsher story. Petitions, objections, and judges weighing claims of abuse against evidence of rehabilitation. Each development reminded the world that the perfect family image of Brangelina had disintegrated into something fragile, bitter, and unresolved. For Pitt, the scandal was no longer about tabloids or public image. It was about whether he would ever regain the trust of the people who mattered most, his own children. That uncertainty, more than lawsuits or headlines, became the most haunting consequence of his choices. As Brad Pitt navigated the tangled aftermath of divorce, lawsuits, and damaged trust, his public identity entered a strange middle ground. He was neither fully disgraced nor fully redeemed, existing in a gray zone where every move was scrutinized. On one hand, Hollywood continued to embrace him. Directors wanted his talent, studios valued his box office draw, and audiences still lined up to see his films. On the other hand, the scandals refused to fade, resurfacing each time Jolie filed a motion or a new detail from the Make It Right case emerged. What made this stage particularly difficult was the way his private life intersected with his career. During press tours,
reporters were often less interested in his artistic choices than in questions about custody or legal disputes. Pitt's carefully measured responses only fueled curiosity, leaving the impression of a man constantly guarding his words. Silence, once a shield, became another source of speculation. Behind closed doors, Pitt focused on personal transformation. He reportedly deepened his commitment to sobriety and therapy, surrounding himself with a smaller, more trusted circle. Friends described him as calmer, more reflective, but also more cautious, aware that one misstep could reignite controversy on a massive scale. This period showed a man reshaping himself not only for survival, but in pursuit of a second act that might carry more weight than the first. Yet, reconciliation with his children remained elusive. Though some began to rebuild ties, others stayed distant, leaving Pitt in a limbo where victory at the box office could not erase personal loss. To outsiders, it was this contradiction, public success paired with private uncertainty, that defined him most clearly. Brad Pitt's story by now was no longer just about fame or failure. It had become a case study in how modern celebrity magnifies every choice, turning family conflicts, failed projects, and private struggles into endless global theater.
By the mid-2020s, Brad Pitt's life had become a paradox. A man celebrated at the pinnacle of his craft, yet burdened by scandals that refused to fade. His films continued to win awards, and his presence on screen remained magnetic. But outside the theater, his legacy was written in headlines about courtrooms and fractured relationships. The battle over Chateau Miraval dragged on, intertwining with accusations of silencing tactics and bitter disputes about money and control. The Make It Right lawsuits resurfaced as deadlines for testimony approached, ensuring that his name remained tied not only to Hollywood, but to broken promises in New Orleans. For Pitt himself, the cost was measured in far more personal terms. The struggle to reconnect with his children overshadowed every professional triumph. Photographs of him at premieres, smiling for cameras, often contrasted with reports of ongoing estrangement, reminding the world that no Oscar could compensate for the absence of trust at home. He admitted in rare interviews that he was still learning how to be better, words that sounded less like rehearsed lines and more like fragments of confession. Public opinion had shifted into permanent ambivalence. Some saw in him a man who had fallen and risen again, admirable for his honesty about addiction and therapy. Others believed the unresolved allegations and lawsuits revealed a darker truth, that Pitt's Charles had always masked deeper flaws. This duality became his defining image, neither hero nor villain, but a reminder of how fragile stardom can be when real life intrudes. As the years moved forward, one certainty remained. Brad Pitt's story would never again be told in simple terms. The golden boy of Hollywood had been replaced by a man scarred by choices, haunted by conflict, yet unwilling to disappear. His scandals, like his films, became part of a narrative larger than himself, a narrative where brilliance and ruin coexisted, forever bound together in the spotlight.
What do you think? Can Brad Pitt ever fully recover his reputation, or are his scandals too big to erase? Share your thoughts below. We'll be reading every comment. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to subscribe, hit like, and check out our next video. We've got even more shocking Hollywood stories waiting for you.